Do you know which company controls the most money in the world? You probably thought of Apple. After all, they sell gadgets that cost as much as small spaceships. Or maybe oil giants like Saudi Aramco. Some would say Amazon, Microsoft, Google, or Nvidia, but none of these is the right answer. And that's exactly how it should be. Money loves silence. The company almost no one talks about manages $12.5 trillion in assets. That company is BlackRock. Try to imagine spending that much money. Let's say you spend $3 million a day on villas, yachts, cars, whatever you want. To finish spending it all, you'd have to start shopping back when the pyramids were built and keep going non-stop until today. And even then, you'd still have half left. Behind these numbers stands one man, Larry Fink. You've probably never heard his name, and that's exactly his power. He's not like Elon Musk, doesn't build social networks, and doesn't run for president. Larry Fink is the opposite of publicity. Rimless glasses, a gray suit, no flash, no show. Quiet, almost invisible. You don't know him, but his algorithms see everything. BlackRock influences what cars get designed, what phones we use, and how much we pay for a mortgage. Every day, Fink's algorithms make decisions that set the rules for the entire global economy. But before building this empire, Fink had to lose everything first. Today, we'll tell the story of a fall that led to global dominance, how the son of a humble shoemaker became one of the most powerful men on Earth. We'll talk about BlackRock, the power of money, and why millions of people may never afford a home again. This is an original episode by Al-Khwarizmi, where stories aren't just told, they're explained. Imagine a world glowing in neon lights and drenched in the most expensive champagne. Men here wear oversized suits and slicked-back hair, drive only sports cars, and make calls to their mistresses on phones the size of a brick. Turn on the radio and Madonna reminds you that money comes first. Welcome to 1980s New York, a city where power means money and optimism is overflowing. Everyone believes that tomorrow will be brighter, richer, and faster than today. But behind this glowing facade, America was quietly rebuilding its entire economic system. And the main architect of that transformation was Ronald Reagan, a former actor who became president in 1981. Back then, the country was suffocating from stagflation, when prices rise but no one feels richer. Reagan looked at the situation and declared, "Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem." That was the beginning of the Reaganomics era, the golden age of deregulation and tax cuts. Reagan's logic was simple. Give the rich more freedom, and prosperity will eventually trickle down to everyone. Next, Reagan went after the banks. Since the Great Depression, U.S. banks had been divided, safe lenders on one side and risk-takers on Wall Street on the other. That barrier, the Glass-Steagall Act, kept the system stable for decades. But for 1980s financiers, stability meant boredom. They wanted speed and profit. With Reagan's blessing, they began tearing down that wall brick by brick. Soon, Wall Street turned into a jungle, full of hungry predators chasing easy money. Meanwhile, another battle raged against inflation. To fight it, the Federal Reserve under Paul Volcker used brutal shock therapy. He raised interest rates to an insane 20%. Borrowing became impossible. Construction stopped. Factories closed. Unemployment soared. The country fell into a recession. Farmers protested, sending Volcker car keys in tiny coffins, but he didn't flinch. And by 1983, his plan worked. Inflation dropped to 3%. For Wall Street, that meant one thing: a golden era for bond trading.
If you bought bonds at 14% interest back in 1982, they were worth a fortune. Wall Street turned into a casino that only seemed to pay winners. And that's when our main character entered the scene, Larry Fink.
Larry wasn't like the classic traders you see in movies. He belonged to a new breed, the quants. These were professional mathematicians using computers and formulas to find opportunities where others saw only boring routines. While ordinary families were paying off 30-year mortgages, Larry saw a gold mine. He approached banks and said, "Sell me these mortgages now. I'll give you cash, so you can issue new loans and earn commissions again. I take all the risks." Larry turned thousands of mortgages into a new financial market, like an alchemist turning lead into gold. The scheme was brilliant: minimal risk, huge returns. Even if a few people defaulted, it barely scratched the surface. At 31, Larry became the youngest managing director in his company's history, generating hundreds of millions a year. But the 1980s Wall Street jungle also had dangerous characters. At Bear Stearns, Larry's main competitor, Jeffrey Epstein, was making waves. They were predators of different kinds, but hunted in the same forest, the forest of easy money. Larry's first big success was like a drug. His models seemed to predict everything. He ignored critics warning about risks. Why listen? The numbers spoke for themselves. In early 1986, his model signaled that U.S. interest rates, long high, would fall. For the bond market, this was a golden opportunity. Larry bet big, investing all his department's money. But the market, living and irrational, went the other way. Rates didn't fall, they rose. Every day, losses piled up. By the end, his department faced a $100 million hole. Larry went from genius to a cautionary tale almost overnight. Meetings were endless. Everyone demanded answers. At home, his wife saw a shadow instead of the man she knew. Fear of failure haunted him daily. He grew up in a simple family, a shoemaker and a teacher. Hard work and brains got him to the top. But after that disaster, he swore never to be powerless again. He decided to build a system that could track every risk and give him total control. He didn't know the name yet, but from the ashes of 1986, the idea of a company that would change the world forever was born. In the world of big money, fear is the emotion of losers. Greed, on the other hand, works. At least that's what the movie heroes of the era said. But Larry Fink, exiled from Wall Street, no longer believed in such quotes. He had seen what blind greed and overconfidence could lead to. So he decided to rethink his relationship with fear. He decided to conquer it. On the surface, nothing seemed to change. Larry aimed to create an even more precise and efficient risk model. But inside, everything had changed. He no longer cared about how much money could be made. Now, only one thing mattered: how much could be lost. The 1980s were about selling safety, not excessive profits. While everyone else chased reckless gains, Larry needed people who had been through the same fire he had. First came Robert Capito, his right hand from the old job, turning Larry's genius ideas into actionable tasks. Next, with Susan Wagner, responsible for the math behind every million-dollar decision. Then Ben Golub, a programmer tasked with translating Larry's sacred book into universal code. And finally, Ralph Schlostein, an old mentor with connections. Through Schlostein, Larry met Stephen Schwartzman of Blackstone. Two worlds collided in a luxurious New York office. Schwartzman, the deal-making king, and Larry Fink, once seen as a loser. The discussion was intense, but Fink convinced Schwartzman to let him and his team run a risk management division. The first task was building the M with a capital M, Aladdin.
In the basement of a modest office, Ben Golub's team assembled the heart and brain of what would become their empire. Aladdin could simulate millions of future scenarios: oil shocks, political coups, bank bankruptcies, pandemics. It allowed Larry to foresee countless outcomes and mitigate risks before they struck. By the mid-1990s, BlackRock managed $24 billion. But managing doesn't mean taking money and running. These were assets of pensions, universities, and insurance funds. More assets meant more fees and more power. In 1994, they bought themselves out of Blackstone for $240 million and became BlackRock, a name that symbolized stability, endurance, and strength, a black rock standing firm amidst chaos. By the late 1990s, BlackRock had predicted the dot-com bubble. While everyone chased flashy internet stocks, Aladdin warned these companies were wildly overvalued. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, BlackRock became the world's last line of defense. Governments called Fink to help manage the fallout, giving him unprecedented access to collapsed banks and toxic assets. Aladdin's simulations allowed them to identify dangerous assets, understand systemic risks, and guide investments. Larry proved that the winner is not the one who earns the most, but the one who loses the most. By 2006, BlackRock's assets under management crossed $1 trillion, almost the GDP of Canada. A company that began in a small, stuffy office now controlled a fortune of global scale. Let's move to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Meet Mr. and Mrs. Smith, a regular American family, 2 kids, 3 dogs, and the dream of owning a home. Their income was modest, and their credit history questionable. It's 2005. The housing market has one rule: take the loan, any loan. An unscrupulous mortgage broker shows up. He doesn't check income or employment. Instead, he offers a ninja loan. No income, no job, and no assets required. The Smiths sign. They get the keys, monthly payments are low, assuming the house value keeps rising. But these mortgages are packaged with thousands of others, mixed into a financial salad called a CDO, collateralized debt obligation. Everyone thinks it's safe. Rating agencies gave the highest marks, just like government bonds. Banks and investors worldwide buy it without hesitation. Pensions in Germany, sovereign funds in Norway, Japanese banks, Chinese investors. Then 2007 hits. The Smiths can't pay. Rates spike. House prices drop. Default spreads like wildfire. The financial salad is full of rotten ingredients, and the system begins to collapse. Enter Larry Fink. Governments call him. BlackRock and Aladdin now have unprecedented access to toxic assets. They see which companies are on the brink, which assets are poisonous, and which strategies will fail. Fink's team guides governments and investors, turning Aladdin's simulations into the last line of defense. BlackRock emerges not just as a company, but as a backbone of the global financial system. By 2009, the world owes Larry a debt of trust. Aladdin isn't just a tool, it's the system's map, a lens to see every hidden risk. And while families like the Smiths suffer, BlackRock's clients remain secure. The lesson is clear. In finance, the hero isn't the one who makes the most money, but the one who avoids losing the most. Larry Fink and his team turned disaster into insight, fear into strategy, chaos into opportunity.
After the 2008 crisis, the word investment became almost a swear word for a while. The U.S. GDP fell by more than 4%, the worst since World War II. Millions of people lost their jobs, 43 million worldwide, and the global economy shrank by $2 trillion. In this climate of despair, everyone, from politicians to ordinary citizens, asked the same question: how could this happen? How did the financiers miss the biggest crisis of our time? At the center of attention was BlackRock. After all, they were part of the system that created those toxic financial instruments, and even the all-seeing Larry Fink wasn't fully prepared for the crisis. BlackRock itself nearly went under, but Fink saw an opportunity amidst the chaos. The idea was simple. If people no longer trust financial geniuses, offer them something simple, cheap, and logical. Not financial magic, but steady, reliable results. This approach became known as passive investing. The model is based on the efficient market hypothesis. There are no underpriced companies. A stock is worth what it is worth. Trusting an active investor is like walking down the street hoping to find a $500 bill. If it existed, someone would have already picked it up. The idea of passive investing goes back to 1975, credited to John Bogle, who created the mechanism for low-cost, long-term investing. The concept is simple. Stop trying to outsmart everyone. A passive investor doesn't chase the next big Apple or Tesla success. They bet on the overall growth of the economy over time. History shows this strategy almost always works. BlackRock took this old idea and turned it into a high-tech product called ETFs, exchange-traded funds. An ETF, like the S&P 500 index fund, is basically a basket of hundreds of America's largest companies. Simple, cheap, and transparent. Let's hear it from our resident finance expert turned comedian. Passive investing is like buying everything in a store without worrying which items will appreciate in value. You get socks, Nike, phones, Apple, and shower gel, Procter & Gamble. Sure, some items may never increase in price, they just sit on the shelf, but it's convenient. No need to guess which sock or phone will make you rich. You just buy the whole shelf, betting that people will keep buying socks, phones, and yes, even shower gel. By 2012, everyone was saying ETFs would become the engine for steady returns. Critics laughed, but today, that prediction has come true. Fink saw that passive investing was the future, but he needed the right tool. The 2008 crisis gave him that opportunity. In London, the world's oldest bank, famous for sponsoring the Barclays Premier League, was on fire. Barclays had also been hit by toxic assets and faced nationalization if it couldn't raise capital. Their crown jewel, iShares, a leading ETF brand, was up for sale. Fink moved in, negotiated a low price, and in June 2009, BlackRock acquired iShares for $13.5 billion. It was a bargain. This purchase gave Fink access to $3 trillion in assets. BlackRock emerged as one of the main beneficiaries of the 2008 crisis, becoming the largest asset manager in the world. They gained keys to the largest corporations and embedded themselves in the U.S. financial system. Many of Fink's protégés became government officials, or vice versa, as officials moved into investment funds. For example, the finance minister who called Fink to save America later became president of the Warburg Pincus Fund, with BlackRock as its top shareholder and advisor. BlackRock also started spending millions lobbying in the European Union, meeting officials and shaping financial regulations. A prime example, Germany, Europe's economic powerhouse. By the mid-2010s, discussions about Angela Merkel's successor were heating up. Behind the scenes, BlackRock was paying attention. Fink identified a stable conservative figure who had lost a race against Merkel in the early 2000s, left politics for business, but retained political ambitions. In 2016, BlackRock appointed him as chairman of its German advisory board. His name, Friedrich Merz. In May 2025, he became Chancellor of Germany. 10 years ago, it was already clear. Larry Fink had, in effect, built a shadow finance ministry. He had access to Aladdin's unique data, control over trillions in assets via ETFs, and connections to governments of the world's leading countries. And most importantly, he had money. The power remained firmly in the United States.
Thanks to popular culture, which we've seen in American movies since the late 80s, the world knows exactly what the American dream looks like. It doesn't matter which U.S. city we're talking about, it's always the same. Take, for example, a fictional suburb called Lakeview. Its streets are named after trees: maple, oak, pine. Every Saturday, these streets fill with the hum of lawnmowers, the smell of barbecue, and the faint scent of chlorine from neighbors' pools. Here's an important detail. These suburbs were built on the principle of ownership. Random students, migrants, or freelancers didn't just move in. People put down roots, knew their neighbors, went to their kids' baseball games together, and hosted street sales. Suburbs like this were the symbol of stability and the hallmark of the American middle class. Then came 2008. While Ilya Kovalchuk scored in the Hockey World Championship Finals in Canada, and Andrei Arshavin toyed with the Dutch team at the Euro Cup, the half-century idyll of the American suburb was already burning in the fire of crisis. The recession tore through Lakeview like a tornado. Charming signs that once read, "My house, my rules," were replaced with notices, "Bank announces foreclosure." Families quietly packed up and left, leaving empty pools and yellowed lawns behind. But even amidst the rubble, Larry Fink found opportunity. Governments, panicked, flooded the economy with money. Interest rates plummeted near zero. Borrowing was cheap. Holding cash or government bonds was foolish. They'd be eaten by inflation. Investors were trapped. They didn't want risk, but without investments, they were doomed. They began searching for a safe haven that would reliably generate income. That's when Fink noticed suburbs like Lakeview. Among millions of small tragedies, he saw what financiers call an undervalued asset class. Thousands of homes that could be bought dirt cheap. Enter Invitation Homes, the company founded by Stephen Schwartzman, Fink's old rival from 15 years prior. Fast forward 4 years after the crisis, a family, the Campbells, comes to check out a house. He runs a veterinary clinic, she's a nurse. They've been saving for 5 years for a down payment. They dream of a backyard, like the house on Oak Street, number 92, where their kids could safely play ball. The perfect home seems found. 3 bedrooms, quiet neighborhood, affordable. They call the realtor. We're ready. Over 3 days while they wait for a callback, they imagine painting the nursery, finishing the basement, inviting all their friends to a housewarming. The realtor calls back. Sorry, you're outbid. Another buyer paid 20% more, all cash, closing in a week. That buyer? An agent for Schwartzman's firm. The Campbells were racing a Buick against a Formula One car. These faceless agents represented shell companies backed by Wall Street giants. Budgets were unlimited, decisions made by algorithm. The Campbells' American dream was defeated by Wall Street math. Fink stayed true to his model. He didn't buy the homes directly, but acquired stakes in the agencies themselves. BlackRock became one of the largest shareholders in Invitation Homes and similar companies. His model was brutal, cynical, and brilliant. 1. Acquisition. Funds buy up homes, turning whole neighborhoods into rental complexes. 2. Monetization. Houses are repaired cheaply with low-grade paint and laminate. They're rented to families like the Campbells who can't afford to buy but can rent. Rent rises constantly. Corporations buy more homes, supply shrinks, and prices climb. Additional fees, trash, utilities, lawn care generate extra profit. 4. Securitization. Thousands of rental contracts are bundled into a new investment product, a security representing future rental income. 5. Distribution. These securities receive high ratings because people always need a roof over their heads. They're sold globally to pension funds, insurance companies, and of course, BlackRock managed funds. The loop closes. If this feels eerily similar to the scheme that triggered the 2008 financial crash, it is, but more sophisticated. The Campbells likely will never own a home. The money they pay in rent feeds the purchase of securities backed by their own rent. BlackRock continues to profit. This process is what some call a new feudalism, a term coined by urbanist Joel Kotkin. Millions of Americans now live like medieval serfs paying rent to landlords they'll never meet. For millennials and Gen Z, the path to homeownership is closed, perhaps forever. Meanwhile, Larry Fink himself lives comfortably and privately. His properties, a Manhattan apartment on Fifth Avenue overlooking Central Park, once home to Nelson Rockefeller, a quiet estate in Westchester near the children of Bloomberg, Gates, and celebrity neighbors like David Letterman and Richard Gere, and a ranch in Colorado where he hikes and fishes with Jeff Bezos and the Koch brothers. Ironically, one of his neighbors in Colorado is John Paulson, the genius who profited from betting against the market in 2008. Fink's personal empire rests on 3 pillars: Fifth Avenue, Westchester, and Colorado. And behind it all is family, wife Lori and 3 children, for whom he has built a perfect world. Fink may not be a cartoon villain, but thanks to him, the peers of his grandchildren may never even afford a parking spot near one of his homes.
How do we usually go grocery shopping? Let's forget about Larry Fink and BlackRock for a minute and just think about how it really works. I usually keep a checklist on my phone. I walk the aisles. When I reach the checkout, I might feel like I've picked products from dozens of independent companies, all competing for my attention and money. Maybe that's true, but here's the twist. All those companies actually have one common owner. His name? BlackRock. Through its funds, which buy almost everything in sight, Larry Fink has become a co-owner of nearly every major Western company. Not one, not two, not 32 stocks. It would take forever to list them all. And yes, you're seeing them on your screen right now. Of course, Fink doesn't personally decide how many teeth Cristiano Ronaldo should show in a shampoo commercial, but his influence over these companies, whose stocks are owned by BlackRock, is massive. By the mid-2010s, when Fink realized he effectively owned all the houses on the monopoly board, it hit him. The entire market is BlackRock, and BlackRock is the entire market. If the U.S. system collapses, so does the giant at its center. So what's left? Make sure the fish don't die from dirty water and don't eat each other. Fink's main weapon, his annual letter to CEOs. Every January, heads of Apple, Microsoft, Ford, and thousands of other companies anxiously await his letter of joy. And you can see why. By the end of the decade, BlackRock managed over $8 trillion, roughly equivalent to the combined reserves of China, Japan, Switzerland, Saudi Arabia, and Israel. Each letter ends the same way. Sincerely, Lawrence Fink. That's his full name, but in the industry and among the rest of us, he's simply Larry. This new corporate cult revolves around 3 letters: ESG. Choosing a company to invest in used to be simple. Just look at profits. Now, according to Fink, it's not enough. You also need to check 1. Environment. Does the company pollute the river where you swim? How much does it spend protecting wildlife? 2. Social responsibility. Any child labor involved in making those sneakers? What are the wages and working conditions? 3. Governance. Has the CEO ever been in a scandal? On paper, it sounds fine. Capitalism with a conscience. But beneath the polished ESG wrapper lies the power of a single man, unelected, deciding the moral compass of global business. Behind ESG are formal corporate reports, carefully balancing real profit-making with what will keep Larry Fink happy. By 2021, Fink stopped requesting and started demanding. Quote, "Since we see companies failing on these issues, we will increasingly vote against management and board members." Translation, play by my rules or you're out. Fink essentially wrote a private penal code for global business, appointing himself both judge and prosecutor. But even a man like Fink can be exposed. Meet Tarek Fancy, who in 2018 led BlackRock's ESG division. After leaving, he revealed the inner workings. According to him, ESG is mostly dangerous placebo and marketing. Nobody at BlackRock genuinely believes their ESG efforts will save the world. Aladdin, BlackRock's system, just noticed demand for socially conscious investments, especially among younger investors, and packaged beautiful but meaningless ideals into a shiny ESG label, then sold it at a premium. Fancy puts it bluntly, it's like selling wheatgrass supplements to a cancer patient. Instead of shutting down harmful power plants, we produce eco-friendly bottle caps. Real impact? 0. But here's the irony. The self-fulfilling prophecy kicks in. Companies with good ESG ratings increase in value. Why does Fink cling to ESG if it's mostly fake? First, ESG funds attract billions, the fastest growing sector in the industry. Fink has tamed the profit wave and doesn't mind that the substance is thin. More importantly, ESG ratings give him leverage. Lower a company's rating, investors pull out, stock drops, management gets fired. No one wants that, and it's kept mostly under wraps.
third factor? Legacy. Successful entrepreneurs eventually think about what they leave behind. Even if Think's ESG strategy is coldly calculated, there's a chance he wants to leave behind not just a world of mathematical models, but a constructed morality. Think's half measures have left everyone dissatisfied. Ultra-left activists display giant banners, BlackRock, top sponsor of climate chaos. Conservative America sees ESG as an attack on traditional values. Florida's governor, once a presidential hopeful, accused Fink of using pensioners' money to push a liberal agenda. Texas Attorney General went further, claiming BlackRock illegally boycotted energy companies and launched investigations. Other Republican states followed. Message? Fink, your job is to make us money. End of story. You don't get to decide what energy is right. By May 2021, a tiny hedge fund owned $50 million in Exxon stock, a fraction of a fraction. Yet it challenged the giant. The fund claimed Exxon's leadership ignores green energy, leading the company towards disaster. We propose 4 board candidates. Think of it like buying a small apartment in Moscow City, then saying, let's build a winter garden instead of offices. But Fink is used to wiping the smiles off corporate execs' faces. BlackRock, owning $17 billion in Exxon shares, backed 3 of the 4 insurgent candidates. The world's largest investor publicly went against the leadership of the planet's largest energy company. 2 other giants, Vanguard and State Street, followed. Together, the trio controlled 1/5 of Exxon. The insurgents got their seats. A small dog climbed onto the backs of 3 whales and brought down the elephant. And if BlackRock is the most visible whale, well, who exactly are Vanguard and State Street?
Larry Fink isn't the only clever mind methodically buying up the world through passive ETFs. There's also State Street. And together with BlackRock, they're part of what's called the Big Three. Type largest shareholders of Pepsi into Google, and you'll see their names. Do the same for Microsoft? Same story. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. NVIDIA? Again, the same 3. We don't need to dive too deep into the history of the Big Three. What matters is this. While they are technically competitors, in practice, they act as one entity. They even own shares in each other through their own funds, a financial Ouroboros, a snake biting its own tail. Consider the numbers. As of this year, the combined assets under management of the Big Three exceed $27 trillion, almost equal to the annual GDP of the United States, the largest economy in history. BlackRock leads the pack, controlling $12.5 trillion, mostly circulating in the U.S. The power of the Big Three is unimaginable, even compared to the 1980s, 1990s, or 2000s. Today, in a boardroom of any major American company, 3 people could effectively decide everything. The scale of their influence is genuinely terrifying. The Big Three are the largest shareholders in 440 out of the 500 largest U.S. companies. On average, they control 22% of votes in each, enough to push through or block any strategic decision. If these 3 decide they don't like the CEO of Coca-Cola, fired the next day. If they think Ford should only make electric cars, Ford will comply. Economists call this common ownership, and it's not a good thing. Studies confirm that in such a system, incentives for the most crucial driver of business, competition, disappear. Take 2 eternal rivals, Coca-Cola and Pepsi, a ward of the deaf. People argue passionately about which tastes better. Ads are shot, billions spent, fans fiercely defend their choice. But here's the secret. Both companies are owned by BlackRock. To the Big Three, it doesn't matter what you buy. Their competition is just a game. One year Coke wins, the next Pepsi. But BlackRock will never let them actually fight to the death. That's lost profit. Their only goal, you drink something and believe you have a choice. Meanwhile, BlackRock profits. That's your competition. Common ownership is an investment in entire universes of companies, and this is exactly what the Big Three do. BlackRock crushes competition on 3 levels. Invisible layer. The CEO, say at Pepsi, isn't stupid. Every morning they check stock prices and know their top shareholders, BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. And they also know these shareholders own Coke. Will they start a price war selling Pepsi Light much cheaper than Coke Zero? Of course not. The common owners would lose out. No need for calls from Larry Fink. Self-restraint ensures stability. Balancing layer. The big 3 have special departments with polished names like responsible investment teams. Hundreds of analysts meet with company management annually to persuade them to maintain the status quo. Power layer. Voting shares. This is the nuclear option when subtle hints fail. If a company gets too aggressive or tries to crush a competitor, the big 3 can replace the entire board in a single day. Example, General Electric. Remember in the 1990s they became Larry Fink's first big client? Almost 30 years later, BlackRock was dictating company rules. In 2021, GE's board wanted to award its CEO a $230 million bonus, so out of touch that shareholders revolted. The decisive blow came from BlackRock and Vanguard. The same fate hit AT&T that year. Research shows that common ownership has real-world effects. In the US, airline ticket prices are on average 5 to 7% higher than if real competition existed. Another study confirms a similar trend. The higher the big 3 share in regional banks, the higher the fees for customers. The result? Not healthy competition that drives innovation and lowers prices, but a powerful cartel. No drugs, murders, or contraband needed. Just a cozy club where the goal isn't to beat a rival, but to maximize profit. Many criticize this system, but there's little anyone can do. Even Warren Buffett, the greatest investor of all time, is powerless. His relationship with BlackRock is one of respectful distance and quiet irony. Buffett spent his lifetime seeking individual company gems for decades-long investments. Fink isn't interested in gems, he buys the entire beach. Sand, souvenir sellers, coconut water stands, kites, knowing that somewhere there are a few precious stones. Their philosophies are incompatible. Buffett trusts the genius of a single analyst. Fink bets on the wisdom of the market as a whole. Ironically, Buffett has done more for Fink's success than anyone else. For years, he told ordinary investors, if you're not a professional, don't try to beat the market. Just buy a cheap ETF and forget about it. Millions listened, sending money into BlackRock and Vanguard. And here's the cherry on top. Fink eventually bought into Buffett himself. BlackRock is now one of the largest shareholders in Buffett's investment company. But even that is minor compared to BlackRock's plans for the future.
A few years ago, something happened in Beijing that barely registered with the general public. But for those who understand the rules of the global game, it was a landmark day. BlackRock became the first foreign company allowed by the Chinese Communist Party to sell its funds to Chinese citizens. Essentially, Larry Fink was handed the keys to a treasure chest that had been closed to everyone else for decades. Smells like double standards, right? Fink has spent years demanding transparency, environmental responsibility, and human rights compliance from the world. But when it came to China, the ESG acronym suddenly slid down the priority list. George Soros accused Fink of naivety and betrayal. But Fink didn't care. For him, this was a cold, mathematically calculated gambit. Think of it like the 19th century gold rush. Imagine you own the world's largest shovel company. You've sold shovels to every miner in California, the Klondike, Australia. The world doesn't need more shovels. Then you discover a mythical El Dorado, 1 billion people who have never seen a shovel but desperately want one. What would you do? Lecture them on corporate ethics and mountain goat populations? Or ship a cargo of shovels straight to them? For Fink, whose empire depends on a constant inflow of capital, ignoring China would be equivalent to dooming his empire. Mission statements, corporate principles, and all the fluff on the website were secondary. to the sacred grail of BlackRock, quiet money. This global approach is what makes Larry Fink extraordinary. He is a citizen of the world for whom borders and national interests are obstacles to capital flow. But even here, Fink found a way to navigate the system. You've probably heard of the World Economic Forum in Davos. Conspiracy theorists see it as the annual meeting of a global government, a gathering of reptilian elites deciding the fate of the planet. In reality, it's both simpler and more complex. Imagine Davos as the board meeting of Planet Earth, Inc. Fink doesn't come as a guest. He comes as the largest shareholder. He doesn't whisper in dark rooms. He goes on stage and tells presidents, prime ministers, and CEOs what he sees as the strategy for the next year. Fink is at the top of the global elite. He knows the winds of power, and more importantly, can influence them. But he doesn't play in the public arena. That's for others. George Soros, the ideologue, spends billions promoting his vision of the world. Millions disagree, and Donald Trump openly despises him. Bill Gates, the techno-utopian, spends billions on small projects worldwide, tackling diseases, building new energy sources, and cleaning systems. For PR, he even drinks water that was waste minutes earlier. Klaus Schwab, the moderator, hosted the elite club for over half a century. He retired this spring, and we'll hear his name less now. Then there's Larry Fink, who isn't a player at all. He stands above them, not spending money, but controlling it. Under his watch are pensions, savings, and insurance. His power doesn't come from personal billions or ideological doctrine, but from control over millions. The less attention paid to him, the better. That's why right-wing commentators often ignore Fink, directing anger at Soros, Gates, and Schwab. You'll never find Larry Fink on Forbes' top lists. Why would he need it? His measly personal billion is irrelevant. Fink doesn't own the water. He controls the pipes. The frightening part? We don't truly know what's going on in Larry Fink's mind right now. 2 years ago, a hidden camera recording leaked online. A middle-level BlackRock manager boasted to a journalist posing as a date. We can't extrapolate his thoughts to Fink, but the mindset is chilling. It's much easier to get things done when people aren't thinking. You can buy a senator for $10,000. The bigger threat is that the BlackRock machine could eventually fail. Imagine a field growing a single type of potato. Perfect harvest until a virus strikes to which this potato has no immunity. The entire field dies in days. Aladdin and his clones, controlling even central banks, are that potato variety. They manage all known risks perfectly, but are blind to the unknown, the black swan that can come from anywhere, technological, natural, or political. The first rehearsal of this black swan occurred in May 2010. One glitch in a trading algorithm caused the U.S. market to plunge nearly 10% in 5 minutes, wiping out $1 trillion. Authorities quickly rolled back the system and stopped the panic. What caused the glitch? A lone trader in London working from his parents' home in pajamas. His bot destroyed $1 trillion. The good news is, such a black swan won't take months or years like 2008. Trillions could evaporate while we brew morning tea and butter bread. If it happens, the irony will be staggering. The digital system Fink created to remove human error and minimize risk could trigger the fastest, coldest global panic in history. Fink could watch it live, seeing his system replicate its own mistakes on a planetary scale, and 2008 would seem like a leisurely stroll.
And that's the world of Larry Fink and BlackRock. A world where invisible hands control the choices we think are ours, where the rules are written quietly and the consequences ripple globally. As you walk out of the store, sip your coffee, or scroll through your feeds, remember, the market you see is not always what it seems.
Power doesn't always shout. It whispers, calculates, and waits. Stay curious, stay aware, and never forget, even the mightiest systems have cracks, and the next black swan might already be on its way. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep your eyes open.